Hello, Rising Phoenix family. Trevor Masterolds here with another conversation from the hearth. We wanted to talk to you guys today about a topic that we've brushed on a little bit here and there, but is a really important one, and that's being a good partner. Being a good partner in a variety of ways. Masterolds, can you talk a little bit about what some of the things that we see on the mats are? What kind of prompted us to want to talk about this today?
Well, I think we actually have some really good partners out on the floor at our school, especially compared to other schools that I've trained at in the past. But like every school, especially in the beginning, you do see people kind of struggling to be good partners. And that leads to, I'm being a little facetious here, but, some kind of fighting out on the mats. Mm-hmm. And a
lot of frustration.
Yeah, some frustration.
Frustration and not knowing why they're getting frustrated. Yeah, it's particularly what I see.
Yeah.
Which we obviously want to avoid. We don't want people to go out there, get really frustrated and be like, this is not for me, or, not know why they're frustrated. Because there's generally a pretty easy fix, and that's what we want to talk about.
Sometimes you see two friends who've known each other all their lives. Mm-hmm. They get out there as white belts, and they just can't stop kind of getting into it with each other, and they don't know why. And it's really because they need to hear this speech. They need to hear how to be a good partner.
Yeah, and so, this often manifests in white belts. Like, that's kind of what we're talking about, is people coming in and they don't know how to be a good partner yet. By the time that they get in the higher ranks, they've partnered a lot, and so they learn some of the skills, some of the ways of interacting that makes you a good partner. And, I kind of wanted to start by saying, why I think we see a lot of white belts come in and have a really difficult time being a partner. I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I think a big reason is because white belts are coming in and they're feeling really anxious. They are maybe, probably they're not feeling very athletic. Either they were athletic younger in their days, or maybe this is their first time doing something really athletic. And so they're feeling a lot of anxiety. They're feeling a lot of insecurity. And then they get partner up. It's one thing to be insecure when you're in the big group and you guys are all drilling together, but then you get partnered up with a person, and this person is looking at you, you're looking at them, and you have this task, which is one of you is going to take the other to the ground or is going to do some submission. And that's really anxiety provoking, and especially if you're coming in and you got a little bit of an ego and you're like, no, I'm thinking of myself as an athletic person. I'm going to make a good martial artist. There can be a lot of resistance to going down with that takedown, and that leads to these new white belts being very difficult partners, being very resisting the techniques because they think that I have good balance, so I shouldn't fall to the ground. Mm-hmm. But by not falling to the ground, that raises up a whole bunch of issues. Can you talk a little bit about the term that we kind of use for what a good partner should be doing?
Yes. So what we're initially trying to work on is compliant training. And
what does that mean for the...
So what we mean is that you're not sparring. Mm-hmm. There's two very distinct things we do. We do drilling and we do sparring. And there's a reason why you don't just play soccer. You spend time dribbling and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Imagine if you were dribbling with your...
Is dribbling a term in soccer, or are you mixing basketball with soccer?
I think it's something when you do with your feet.
Maybe,
kick it back and forth. Okay.
Clearly we're not soccer players.
I went to soccer when I was a little kid, but I can't remember anything from that. But
yeah, you drill and do...
Let's say we were working on passing, in soccer, and I go to pass to you, and I do it in a really difficult way for you to catch the ball. Mm-hmm. We're not learning to work as an efficient team. Mm-hmm. And so the very first step is compliant training. Mm-hmm. We got to learn. And what we mean by compliant is, going with the technique so that the person can get the maximum success, especially early on.
Yeah. Now, not fighting back against the technique. If someone's trying to arm bar me, not trying to resist the arm bar as hard as I can. If someone's trying to sweep me to the ground, not trying to stay on my feet and trying to wrestle against the other person, but going with the technique in a way that protects you, that protects your partner.
And that can come in many forms. It can come in the form of, let's say you're trying to armbar me and I'm actively resisting. It can also come in the form of you trying to, some kind of joint manipulation on me and I'm breathing. and just allowing myself to be like super, super uber relaxed, almost like I'm taking a deep tissue massage, which is not going to be the way that your body is tensed when you're actually doing it in reality. And that is another form of fighting. It looks it's kind of like a passive aggressive way to resist. And, you know, a lot of people will let it bleed into their ego. So they'll say, well, I'm just, you know,
so difficult to submit.
I'm just so flexible. And that's where your ego's really coming in. And what you should be doing is you should be tapping when, like, if you are, let's say, a little bit extra flexible, it's probably actually due to the fact that you're, like, kind of taking it like a massage and just, like, being super relaxed in a way that you would never be in the actual conflict. But let's just say, hypothetically, you are extraordinarily flexible. You're not being a good partner, because what they really need is they need to figure out what's the average.
Yeah.
What is a person actually going to be doing in this situation? And a lot of times too, when you're doing things like that, you're actually moving into terrible positions by the way you're kind of positioning your body, and you're kind of acting in a way that is just, you know, maybe you're like completely flopping forward, so your face is totally on the ground, and in reality you would be like in an awful position.
Yeah, but because you're making it really hard for them to get the one technique that we're drilling, there's like this, they can't get me kind of feel.
So just looking at the broader picture and not letting your ego kind of get involved in the learning experience is really important.
And that kind of gets back to our original point of people being frustrated but not knowing why. Because that person who's trying to do that, you know, joint manipulation technique, they're doing it right.
Yeah.
But their partner is not tapping, and they're like, I don't know why. And it's because their partner is being a really, really difficult partner. They're doing it correct, and they should be building that good, you know, conditioning, doing that technique right.
So, you know, I'd like to get into some specifics on how you can be a good partner in striking and grappling. But before we do, you know, I want to kind of address the... what's it called? Like the thing in the room?
The elephant in the room?
The elephant in the room, I guess, is the expression.
Yeah.
You know, and for most of my students, I don't think this will even come to their attention. But I think for people who have maybe watched a lot of MMA or kind of bounced around in some, you know, kind of low-level circles in, like, fight gyms and stuff, they might come in and they have this mindset like, oh, compliant training, that's what's kept us in the dark for 500 years. You know, we really need to see in reality, okay?
Yeah.
And this is a very naive, kind of newbie perspective that they don't realize that even in the most hardcore fight gyms, when you get to the top, you become compliant at some level. You have to become compliant because it is from compliant training that you actually learn. Like, we're not sparring right now. We are drilling. You know, later when we're sparring, okay, you can take it up a notch, you know, if you want to go there. But when you're drilling is not sparring. And I think these kind of young buck martial artists have trouble parsing out those two realities. And so they think that drilling is sparring, and that's a very destructive mentality. It's why white belts injure other people all the time. And it's one reason why in really competitive fight gyms, they have a saying, you got to be the nail before you can be the hammer. So when they come in, what they end up happening is they have that mentality. That's what the newbies have. Oh, I'm going to be real tough on my partners, blah, blah, blah. And then the head instructor just breaks them. He just submits them again and again, and just until they're like puppets. And he's like, okay, now you're going to, you know, be submissive. And of course, in a school like ours, which is all about being a family-friendly martial arts school, we're not going to go around breaking all of our students. Well, you know, if I have to. But, you know, we don't want to get there. That's why we have these kind of conversations, to sort of intelligently articulate what's going on, so everyone is on the same page and realizes they're choosing to be compliant in the early stages to develop their skills.
Yeah, now, and they're developing really important things by doing that, right? They're developing confidence in the technique. They're developing timing and distancing and balance, and these are all things that you will only develop by conditioning them over many, many times, executing that technique. Executing that technique correctly. So that's why you want to be able to execute the technique in not the best case scenario, but in a good case scenario where you're able to actually do the technique and not have people fighting in weird ways, so that when you are building that muscle memory, you're building your confidence to be able to execute that technique.
The reason why all athletes drill and all sports require some drilling is because in the act of playing the game, it's way too chaotic and competitive for them to get enough practice doing the repetitive motion to become good at it. And it would be like if I said, okay, Trevor, you want to learn how to play Dance Dance Revolution? We're going to do Dragon Force on super extreme difficulty. Go!
And that's your only practice.
I can't even begin to understand what I'm supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah.
And it's the only practice. So what you do is you start with the really simple songs and a slow tempo, and then you slowly increase it faster and faster and faster, and so you can get kind of the hang of it. And that's why this compliant training is so important.
Yeah.
And to understand that from a very beginning, because if you don't, you shatter their confidence.
Yeah.
They become very frustrated. And like you said, the white belts are already very nervous and anxious about being out there on the floor, and you just make it even worse, so it's even more likely for them to hurt each other.
Yeah.
And that's what we see all the time with the white belts. You get one guy, he's being a very difficult partner, okay? And the other one's being a really submissive partner. And the submissive partner is trying to do something on the hard partner at first, and the hard partner is just trying to kind of take it a little too far, and not tapping when they should be tapping or whatnot. And then the submissive partner goes from being a lamb to a lion, and they go raw, and they really
because they're frustrated from quote failing, for the past 2 minutes.
And the other guy is kind of getting an ego now because he thinks that they're going the same difficulty, and he's being successful where the other one's not. And what he's forgetting is that the reason why the other guy's not being successful is because you're being a hard partner.
Yeah.
And so meanwhile, the guy who's being the hard partner is getting this ego, and he thinks he's doing really good, and that's making the compliant partner become really frustrated.
Yep.
And so he goes from being a lamb to a lion, and he hurts the hard partner.
He cranks the heck out of that.
He jerks it, and then the hard partner blames the other guy for going ham. And it's just like, you guys need to sit down and have a talk and explain what's going on, how to be a good partner, and that's why we're having this conversation. So compliant training is very important. It's not just for people who want to, kind of take it easy and go through the motions. It is absolutely essential for even the best of the best players to start out doing things slow. Listen, when I went to Korea and I'm training with the all world champions, all national champions, the best in the world, I was kind of surprised when we did all the kicks and punches super slowly at times. And why did we do that? We did that because it's harder to do it slowly. And by doing it slowly, we learn all those micro nuances that are going on in our body so that we can do it fast. And that's what we're doing here. We're doing it slow so we can develop the balance and the timing and distancing and build the confidence in these sorts of things. Yeah. But anyway, without getting derailed and kind of repeating ourselves too much, I'd like to talk a little bit about the differences between striking and grappling, how we can be a good partner when we're doing our punch defenses, when we're doing sparring, counters and combinations and things like that.
Because they manifest differently in like striking versus grappling versus the defense.
So the principal things I see happen a lot when we're striking is people are not striking in an intelligent way. They're kind of just reaching out and touching the person.
Yeah, they're like playing tag.
They're playing tag.
It's really fast and
and what they do is they throw their technique from the very beginning. And if you throw your technique from your shoulder, let's say I'm doing a punch, right? And I throw my technique from my shoulder. So I release all the power way up here at the shoulder. It is very fast, but by the time it gets to my target, there's no energy left. And so it looks like I'm moving really quickly, but
there's no power.
There's no power, so I don't even need to block that really.
Yeah.
The punch that is scary, the punch that has power is it starts slow and then it gains power right at that last second. And we learn in striking that we want to intercept right before the tightening. And that's why that slow compliant training is so important, because we learn, the right timing distancing. This is right when I have to intercept. This is right when I have to jam them up. And so that's really important. Also, remembering that you need to engage your whole body in the technique. One of the things I see most common amongst beginning practitioners in the striking is they just kind of throw their hands out there, and they're not actually engaging their core, which is the first thing that happens. You have to twist your core, then your arm follows. So a good practitioner will be watching your core to see what's going to come out of it.
Yeah, and the difficult thing there, if we're on the topic of being a bad partner, is if you're just going for speed, if you're just doing these techniques as you're describing, there's no telegraph. They're just kind of flying out there in a really unpredictable manner, and so it makes it really hard to intercept, to block, to dodge in an intelligent way. But you wouldn't really need to do those things for these techniques because they have no power.
Yeah.
You would just ignore them and just obliterate the guy because they're playing tag with you when you're in self-defense mode.
Yeah.
And so actually being a good partner, go ahead.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, just some things to remember. Throw it with the compression of your body that makes sense with generating power. Throw it by using your core to generate power, so it looks realistic, so I can get the proper telegraphy.
Yeah.
Okay. And then also remember, throw it at the right target. A lot of beginning practitioners will pull their punch. Will actually target their punch to land before it would hit their face.
Yeah.
Whereas what you want to do is you want to pull it before it hits the face. So you don't want to actually, if the person doesn't block, you don't want to hit them in the face, right?
Right.
But you want it so that is what would happen if you didn't pull your punch right before you did it.
Because also they can't block it unless it's going to the right target.
Exactly. Yeah, I can't tell you how frustrating it is sometimes when I work with a white belt. And they're well-meaning, but they throw their punch way off to the side, and I'm like, I wouldn't even block that.
Yeah.
I can't even block it because it's so far away from my arm, I can't even interact with it. So you need to make it come to my face. But in the chance that I'm not able to get my hands up, you have to have enough self-control to not actually punch me in the face.
Right.
And that's really where we start developing this vulnerable relationship that leads to real success on both ends. Now, we're getting a little.
So that's striking.
Yeah. So that's striking. So I want to get on to grappling. In grappling, what we see is, I think in striking we see more of a competitive thing going on, where the ego starts to get involved and they kind of go for it. With grappling, a lot of times what we see is a fear of falling and hurting themselves, and so they get very rigid. And what you first see with grappling is people getting very, very rigid and kind of scared. They have no idea what's going to happen. They kind of lock up, which is, of course, the worst thing you want to do when you're doing a break fall, right?
Yeah.
You want to be loose and supple and kind of go with it. And
you don't want to timber like a cut tree and just, slam down belly flop front or back onto the floor.
Yeah. So you first see rigidity, then they realize, whoa, that's a big mistake. I don't want to do that. Then they get ridiculously floppy, and they're just kind of flip-flopping all over the place. And you call this water balloon?
I call this water ballooning because they're just like this water balloon that has no structure. It's like what, I can't even do anything with you because you're just your weight is shifting in really weird, unpredictable ways. You can actually see this when kids do it, when they really don't want to get taken somewhere and they just go super loose and floppy, and it's really hard to pick the person up because they're like a water balloon that's just
they go in drunken master mode, and that seems like it's effective in that weird controlled little environment, but what ends up happening is when we're actually grappling, what I want to do is I want to kind of get you into the drunken monkey mode where you're kind of dancing around, and then I wait and I feel your weight shifting, and when your weight shifts onto the right foot, that's when I sweep your legs out from underneath you and take you to the ground. So that looks like it's kind of useful in some weird situations where they're maybe going just after your wrist and trying to do some weird wrist lock to you. But when you're actually fighting, being that floppy and silly, you're just going to get picked up and slammed on the ground. You're just going to get your legs taken out from underneath you. So it's not an intelligent way to interact, and it's just an annoying way to interact with your partner. And that, in addition, when I go to throw this super floppy person, their legs are all flip-flopping around, slammed into each other. Maybe they kick themselves in the groin. They step on their own groin. Amazing things can come out of it. And you know what the funny thing is? They blame you. Yeah. They blame you, and they're the ones who aren't controlling their body at all. So, we need to take responsibility of our bodies and realize that sometimes it's our own sort of foolishness that's landing us in those situations. So first we see extreme rigidity, then extreme floppiness. Then we go into the third stage, which is where most white belts are, which is this
oscillating between the two really fast.
Yeah. They're I don't know where I'm frozen, and I'm really loose, and you're just kind of going back and forth, and it becomes very confusing as a veteran who's kind of talking sort of chill and hey, let's move, and I was like this. How to interact with them? Because every second it's different. And so ultimately what you want to do is adopt a stance that is sort of knowledgeable about what's going on and sort of allowing yourself to move into the right positions. If the person you're working with doesn't know the right position, you're moving yourself into the right position and kind of help encouraging them, like, okay, you need to like get me a little higher on your back and you need to get your hip in a little bit deeper, and just kind of helping them move through it. Now, I'm not saying
helping them to get it right.
Get it right. Now, I'm not saying like I want you to like they go and throw you like with 10% power and you do this massive dive roll and go flying across the room. But like when they go to throw you, don't jerk yourself in the opposite direction randomly. You should be like, okay, I'm gonna be thrown this way. I'm going to start like as they throw me, I'm gonna move with it and do a proper break fall. And you would be surprised. It takes a lot of experience, and we're not expecting anyone who's listening to this on day one to get it right. You guys are all going to be a combination of super tight and super floppy, and then, moving through these phases. But if you know this beforehand, I think it will help you get to more of the supple stage earlier, and then also realize that you need to have some strength in your body, and you're not going to be just flopping all over the place.
And hopefully it also helps you articulate to your partner, if you feel like my partner's being really floppy, to say like, hey, can you have a little bit more structure? I'm having a hard time getting this. And not just feel frustrated with yourself and not know why you're frustrated, and then, leaves all that. So hopefully it helps you understand and articulate.
So one last thing that we would really want to touch on before we kind of wrap the discussion on partner training. I think there's a lot more things that we could talk about, but one of them is don't lecture your senior. Yeah. Now, this sounds obvious, but it's incredibly common. You'll see like a red belt or a blue belt get partnered up with a white belt or a yellow belt, and the lower rank is trying to teach the upper rank how to do the technique. Even if you did this class like the night before and I was explaining to you exactly how to do this technique, and the blue belt or red belt hadn't done that technique in a few years, the right way to approach that is to say, well, I'm just learning this myself, but last night I was working with Master Olds and he showed me how to do it like this. And it's just a really like kind of submissive, deferential way. That is the way to properly address your senior. Listen, if you want your senior to help you on this path, and your seniors are here to do that, that's one of the things that we really focus on as a school, is that the older generation mentoring up the younger generation, being good role models and examples. If you want to have a good relationship with your senior, the surest way to destroy your relationship is to be incredibly competitive with them. The best way is to realize that they have been doing this for many years. They may not have done that technique in a couple of years and they're going back and reviewing it, but show them the respect that they deserve and allow you and them to develop a mutually vulnerable relationship, which is, again, allow you guys to go deeply. Because if you get in a competitive relationship with your senior, this is what's going to happen. You're going to lose. They're going to be very difficult partner with you. They're gonna remember how difficult you are when they go to spar. They shouldn't be, but these kind of this grudge would sort of continue, and then they're gonna keep all of their secrets that they could be imparting to you right then and there when you're drilling to themselves. Because they don't want to help you any more than they have to. Because
you're being a bad partner, they want to give you more ammunition to be an even more difficult partner in the future.
You're being kind of like a hotshot know-it-all, and they don't want to make you even more like that. So,
and the other thing that I would add to that is like just respecting the fact that if you have a higher rank, they have a lot more curriculum in their head that they're remembering, and they're coming back and they're helping you with this thing that they may not have touched in a while. You just learned this yesterday. This is the only thing that's been uploaded into your head. So don't get an ego and be disrespectful to the senior who's trying to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to kind of wrap things up, just remember there's a big difference between drilling and sparring. When you're drilling, you're trying to be a compliant partner. As you kind of go up through the ranks and you get really good at those techniques and you develop a mutually vulnerable relationship with other people who are in the school, you can feel comfortable taking it to the next level and getting a little bit closer to that sparring reality. But certainly when you're first starting out with somebody you don't know very well, always start from that place of compliance. remember, it's like if I was going out and teaching my son how to do soccer,
Mm-hmm.
a bad example for us because we really don't know anything about soccer. But if I was trying to teach him to play soccer, and I was a very good soccer player, and I put him in front of the goal, and I said, son, I want you to block my ball. And I kicked that ball like 100 miles an hour, and I curved it so it hit like super high up on the net, so there's like no way he could block it. What kind of learning experience would that be for your son? Do you think he's going to stick around with you? He's going to keep learning from you? No, it's going to be extremely frustrating.
Or the even, I think, more apt example, you just send it 150 directly at his face. And you're like, yeah, let's do that again. He's going to be like, no, I'd rather not. That sounds really unpleasant.
Although that is a little bit more of the direct confrontation that we don't see very much. We do sometimes see it, and then those are the ones that like I have to break it up and that gets kicked out of the school or something. But what tends to happen is this more passive aggressive kind of like in the background sort of stuff, and that's more of like the hyper competitive, not letting the other person be successful kind of stuff. And, I think if we all keep that in mind, it's going to be a better training experience for everyone. So that's why we felt inclined to kind of share this with you. Of course, I think all of you guys are doing a great job. I think our school in particular, we have some really empathic, sympathetic people who really are doing their best to be compliant training partners. But, we can all let our ego get the best of us. And so... That's the train. That's our cue. Hang it up, guys. Until next time, keep training hard.